All right. Well, welcome back to the Temporal Eternal podcast. We are so glad that you are joining us today. Once again, the
Hooday!
Temporal. Okay. Yes. Matt is very excited because of the Super Bowl, which we'll get to in a second.
Sorry.
The Temporal Eternal
I just
podcast is where we discuss how to live for eternity in our relationships, ambitions, and time. So Matt, you're excited about your Bengals, right, man?
oh, you can't even imagine how excited I am. If they I know they're going to win on Sunday, so I might
How do
cry.
you know that? How does one know that?
Man, I mean, we got
I love
you
his
should
faith.
see our
I
you
love
should
his faith.
see our end zone before a game. 20, maybe 25 players praying. It's awesome. Of Bengals players at our own end zone. So it's not like the combination where they pray together. It's our guys praying for them and their
You know what?
life and their
I like that. That's
fans
an
and
acceptable answer.
you know. So I'm telling you, Bengals by 6.
Whoa, by 6. Bold prediction.
Mm,
Yeah,
laying the
we were
predictions, huh?
talking to Matt before because we record usually a few days prior to us, releasing it just to edit and everything like that. So this is going to come out Tuesday. So the actual podcast is going to come out after the Super Bowl. So I told him, I was like, don't say, "Hey, excited," Bengals won. I mean, you can, but
Bengals
it'd be super
won.
embarrassing. And then they're like, the Rams won, and then you'd be like, "Oh, this is awkward." So, um, but yeah, it'll be a fun Super Bowl. So hey, we're gonna dive right in. Once again, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we are on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe and follow all those places, as well as check out our website. We have some cool merch, things like that. But we're gonna dive right into it. And today we're gonna be talking about the metaverse, and what the
Dun,
metaverse
dun.
is.
The metaverse.
I kept thinking like the Matrix movie or something, but yeah, the just like that, like sunglasses and anyways, but the metaverse, like what it is, how we should deal with it as Christians, and just as humans, right? And then maybe the negatives to it, and then the positives to it. So we're
Hold
gonna
on.
we're gonna dive right in. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, when I think of metaverse, I think of Wally. You say Matrix, I say Wally.
Ah, two very different
I've never seen that.
perceptions there.
I've never seen that movie, so I don't have the context, but I'll take your word for
He's
it.
never seen
Oh
Wally?
my
Wow.
gosh.
No,
Donald.
I haven't seen Wally.
Donald.
Man, living under a rock. It's been out for a while too, so that's okay.
If
That's
we do
okay.
a legitimate movie reference, I'll take your word for that one. There's a movie called Ready Player One, and Ready Player
Yes.
One is I mean essentially, I mean it's video game theme, but it's essentially the metaverse. But yeah, the metaverse is not Facebook. Let me just be very clear by that. The metaverse concept, and they've had this for years in video games, is essentially a digital world. You'll have your own character, if you will, that you'll be able
Avatar.
to edit. Avatar, thank you for that, the correct term. And then you'll be able to edit your avatar to however it looks. And then you get to walk around this digital world, very similar to a lot of video games have been like. And then down the line, coming up even now, you will be able to purchase different items, things like that, digitally, if you will. And we're not going to dive into crypto and NFTs and all that, but we're just going to really focus on the metaverse.
We're
So,
we're not quite the investing platform when it comes to finances, but
no,
investing eternally. That's what our focus is. So
hey, that can preach right there. So yeah, so we're just talking really about the metaverse concept as a whole. There's a lot of different organizations and companies that are already creating small versions of this and putting things together. Facebook is one of them. They renamed themselves Meta, and really it will be kind of an arms race to whoever's going to be kind of that flagship. There's talking about how there'll be interactions between the different worlds, if you will, but who knows? So yeah, I'd love to kind of hear from you guys, and what other feedback or info about that you've researched about the metaverse and what that looks like.
So I see some crazy things happening in this metaverse. I don't know about you guys, but there is a church. I've only found one so far. They bought this real estate because you have to buy real estate inside of this metaverse. Um, so they are actually having an online service inside metaverse. So you put your goggles on, you walk over to this building, you go inside, they have greeters at the doors and everything. You walk into like this um it's more like a movie theater look, and it's just like rows and rows and rows, and you go in and they have a message playing right there continuously. I don't know if it's the same message or what, but it's called their Life Church. They actually have
Mm-hmm.
universe or metaverse going on with church. So they're preaching
Yep.
inside the metaverse already. That's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, that's Craig Rochelle's church, and they actually Life Church was the first Bible app. So the original YouVersion Bible app
Mm-hmm.
was started by Life Church as well. So they've been, very much the people that have jumped on the cutting edge, if you will, of these things. So yeah, it's I've seen a couple videos, Matt. It's really interesting to and I don't know if it's their church or another church, but I saw somebody showing like somebody was doing baptisms, which I thought that was pretty wild too. So
Wait, inside the metaverse?
the
Like, were
metaverse,
they
yeah.
baptizing the character, or were they?
Yeah, they're baptizing the
Yeah.
avatar.
So then there's the
I
controversy of, is the baptism real? Because
Is it
did it
valid?
physically happen? Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
So
Well,
I
I
yeah, yeah.
think
mean,
this whole conversation brings up a lot, I think, interesting things for us, anybody. How we
yeah.
interact as individuals, as people, as a society, as the church, as believers. And like Donald said before, like the metaverse is not a new concept. There's been many platforms. Just so we set like a little bit of a background, like, and I don't know, trust me, I'm not an expert on this at all, but just in my research, like, looking at different places like Decentraland, Somnium Space, the Sandbox, different things that have been around for a while. But yeah, I think there's been, in the last couple of months, since now Facebook, as well as Microsoft, kind of trying to launch some of their potential in this space,
Yeah.
is how do we interact with the internet and some of these places, and what are, like Donald said, like the dangers, what are some concerns, but also like what are the opportunities here. And I think our goal is to talk, like, as a believer, how do you react, how do you respond, and again, like we said, there's going to be some conversation about what we see going on, and just our society at large. But it is interesting, isn't it, guys? Like baptisms, church services, uh, and I think I've seen, I'll throw it back to you guys, I've seen even just some conversation, and even conversation on the level of arguments of, is this right? Is it not right? Is it really church? Is it not church? And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing to see, I think, responses. Anytime we have new technology, there's always a lot of apprehension, I think, on how it's used and where it's used and the validity of it. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out over time, and how people use it as a platform for good or for bad. So
Yeah, no, let's focus on that then. I think because you guys both kind of, we're really focusing on the tool that it is, and maybe the good, and maybe we can, on the back end, we'll kind of touch on, some of the things that are uh, we need to be wary of, or prepared, on the negative side of things. But like I read a really good article. If you just Google the Gospel Coalition.org and then just put prepare metaverse or metaverse, there's a really, really interesting article there. I got a lot of good insights from it. It's a faith-based article. But one thing I disagreed with what they said
Links in the
is,
comments,
well,
or links in the description. We'll put the link in the description
sure,
for you
we'll,
guys.
we'll put the link in the description. Good call out. Definitely. For the article, one interesting thing I saw, um, the one thing I disagreed with was they said we're 5 to 10 years away, and I completely disagree. We are not 5 to 10 years away from this. We are, like Brennan just said, there's actually some of these happening now, and to be honest with you, and I'm not super into business, but Facebook's actually reporting like some of its lowest profits ever. So So if Facebook is not doing so well as a company financially, right, as they have been for in years, so they're more motivated than ever to get this metaverse thing going ASAP. And there's other people as well because they know they call this Web 3.0. So you have like the internet, and now you have like kind of social media and the apps, and now what this thing is, which is the metaverse, which is Web 3.0. So I think it's 12 to 24 months. It'll continue to develop more, but I really do. I think in the next, year, 2, 3 years, and as more users are using it. So I,
There
I
was
say that to say, like, go
there
ahead.
was more Oculuses, like the device that you use to get into the metaverse, sold than Xbox. So
Yeah. Yeah. And this is,
It shows you
so,
where
so
we're at.
this has happened.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's going to happen quick. And then the other thing that was really fascinating from the article that they had said, which was they said that we are just catching up to, in the churches in the last 5 or 10 years to the internet and social media, which I thought was spot on. I do think there's always a handful of churches that are a little bit more cutting edge, but I think they're right. And it made me think, because of the, wariness or whatever. Yeah, like we could actually, people might hesitate too long in the metaverse, opposite of what you're seeing with Life Church and a few other churches, and then we end up being behind. If you think about like how long it took a lot of churches to do live streaming or to, be on Facebook and stuff like that, I it's very there's a high possibility that the church is going to do the same thing with the metaverse. So and now we think about social media, and most churches and most Christians think about church that of live streaming and social media as, yes, it's a necessity to spread the gospel,
Yeah.
but we were kind of late on it. So is that going to happen here?
Well, and I think we can even back up a little bit as we get into this conversation of the idea of even just live streaming itself and the tool that the church has used and how we've used it. And it was kind of controversial up until the start of this pandemic back in 2020, when it no longer became the antics of the devil per se, for everybody, because everybody was like, no, we need this now because we have to, on some degree, probably use live streaming. And so I'm not calling out the extreme one way or the other, but churches that weren't live streaming, whether it just because they're a smaller church or didn't have the manpower to do so or the equipment, jumping on board and trying to figure out ways to do it. And now it's a more common thing. And also we've seen now an impact of, okay, this can be used as a very good tool. And now,
Totally.
as we're a couple of years in this, we're starting to see that conversation continue to say, okay, the online church is great and has amazing abilities within its power as a tool for spreading the gospel and preaching to someone who maybe never would come to church. But also, we have to balance that with the importance of coming together and gathering as the church. And so I think that's where now, as we start to talk about this whole metaverse idea and integrating the church and church interactions within it, is how do we do that? How do we do it effectively? And yeah, I think there's going to be uh, somewhat of a hesitation for some. Yeah, I think it again. I'm not saying one way or the other. I think it's going to be really interesting to see play out. And so, yeah,
you're
it's just interesting to watch some of these trends and how they've happened and the circumstances of the world and how do we adopt and adapt, not conform necessarily, but we have to adapt. And so, how are we using what we have to the best of our ability, really, to do the same? And the thing that is at the heart of everything we do, which is to spread the message of Jesus everywhere we go with whatever we're doing. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see again how people react, how people respond, um, and what play and what factor that will have for the church itself. So,
the biggest thing is you're saying that churches are so far behind. It depends on the size of the church, I have a feeling, because the resources that they have, because these devices that you put
absolutely,
on your head, they cost, was it $300? So if you need to have a volunteer team to go into this metaverse and be in there, like, that's a lot of money. Are you just expecting those people to have the device and stuff? Or are you going to provide it for them? And you have to buy a spot. You have to buy real estate inside of the the metaverse. So, I mean, some churches will be behind because they can't afford it as well. So,
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, it's valid, and also but here's the other side of it. Some church organizations will be behind, but the church doesn't have to be.
exactly.
Like I'm a big believer, and I've always said this is sometimes what we've done in the modern day American church is we bottleneck the gospel, and that we have said that the only way that people will find out about Jesus is coming to church service. And don't get me wrong, that is an amazing way. There's truth to people coming to church, hearing a sermon, coming to Jesus. But not everybody is going to go to church, right? Like you may be the only Bible that somebody reads, right? Like your life. So
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, us as Christians, right? I've thought about it, and we've done street ministry, right? I know me and Brennan did it in Chicago, and evangelism and that kind of stuff and outreaches. And I thought, like, down the line, yeah, I might, and I have to balance it because I don't want to get lost in the world, and we'll talk about that side of things in a second. But like, I might get an Oculus and put a timer on my phone and go, I'm gonna spend an hour a week with the mission, with the purpose to talk to people about Jesus, just as we would if we went to downtown Chicago, or just, and a quote one of my
Yeah.
old pastors used to say was, um, the message is sacred, not the method. Like the method of how I present the gospel or talk to somebody is not sacred. The word of God is sacred. We're not going to twist or change the word of God. The message of the gospel and who Jesus is sacred. But I mean, look at worship music, from hymns, right, to psalms, to things in the Bible, right, to hymns, to contemporary, to hip hop, to genres of talking about Jesus. So I think at the end of the day, are we glorifying God? Are we bringing people to Jesus? I think is like a crucial indicator. And I think I agree with you guys. Like, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and there's situational stuff too, right? Like my mom has a few different health things going on right now, so she's not able to go physically to church service. So she does. She joins her Bible study on Zoom, and she'll stream, right, or listen to the message. But right now, she physically can't attend. So there are legitimate situations. And I mean, I pray to the Lord that, like, this is the last pandemic, but what if that happens again? Right. I like those type of situations. I mean, things have changed. Like I can't give somebody a high five or a hug like that I've never met before. And even the ones I do now, like a lot of things culturally are shifting. So, there's some of these things that kind of lean in, the metaverse kind of leans into some of those changes.
No, yeah, that's great. I just want you to think of this though. You got the metaverse. You go up to talk to people, like for people that doesn't know much about it, about these Oculus devices or whatever. Can you talk to people directly, or are you just looking at them? Like how does that work? Can you hear what people are saying? Do you know?
Yeah, you can have conversations in here. So you'll be in there, you'll look at their avatars or characters, and then you can kind of have conversations with like the mic and stuff,
Oh,
and talk
really?
to them.
So it's like playing on Xbox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's very similar to that. Like even the Craig Rochelle Church, like I saw a video clip of it, and everybody's just sitting like on these like stairs, if you will, watching.
Mhm.
And then there's an actual video, a real life video. So it's not it's not, the pastor's not yet, we're not there yet. The pastor's not preaching as as a avatar, but it's just an actual video of the message,
I just had
like that
an
they're watching.
amazing idea for these. So you know how like you're watching on your phone or whatever, you're watching service on your phone. It's just
Yep.
not it doesn't feel the same, right? Especially during worship
Mhm.
or something. You put on these goggles. You have a 360 camera towards the front. So you're at the front of the
Totally.
stage and you're like that's where like up front you feel the spirit a little bit more, it's like you get into it more, right? So like if you're have these goggles on, you could be up front and worshiping, and you could be front row, and you can turn around and see all the people behind, but in the congregation worshiping in real life on Sunday mornings. That could be a new Facebook Live.
No, I mean
There you
that's
go.
fabulous. I mean, in some ways, this will make the online experience better. Like, so
Yeah.
for people streaming online or things like that, like in some ways, like this actually can improve that for people.
For sure.
Well, and I think we have to think about like the why of it all, you know. And not to make that just a broad statement, but I think we have to look at it and say this is a pretty big question. So, you know, I'm not sure that we're attempting to necessarily answer this in its full entirety. But if we look at things in our society, if we look at what's going on, I mean, for Facebook as a company, which between Facebook and Instagram, the largest social networking platforms in the world, worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Intentionally changed their name, right, from Facebook as a company to Meta. Like they're
Yeah.
intentionally putting everything into this. You know, I don't know about everything, but a
No,
lot, like you
no.
said, Donald.
A
Like
lot.
He said
they,
a
they
lot.
really,
It's like 108
yeah.
billion
Oh,
Yeah, a
absolutely,
huge
right.
it's a huge shift, yeah.
or million.
Exactly. And
108
so like
billion.
they're
Yeah.
intentionally doing this. And again, we've like we've said, this isn't only Facebook that is doing this. There's other, you know, decentralized platforms and things like that that are doing it and everything like that. But when we ask that question, like why are we headed in this direction? And I think it could do two things. It could give us either that fear of like, okay, we go to the extremes. We have to talk about this. In the sense of I think a lot of people's minds go to the concept of like the movie Ready Player One. If you haven't seen this movie, it's kind of set in the future where a lot of things have gone on in the world, wars, famines, things like that. Most people are living in poverty, and so their escape becomes this virtual reality world that is built. And now the creator, and not to give the whole scope of the video, the movie itself, but essentially there is a prize to be won where you get control of this entire world, whoever wins these certain tasks and things like that. But you kind of see like the clash of like what is real life versus what is happening in like almost this like fine line where people get kind of lost in virtual reality and they can't distinguish between what they're experiencing, whether it's real life or it's not. And so I think that like whether you're Christian or not, I think that's kind of like the grandiose concern for this whole meta experience and virtual reality and artificial reality. It's like what is the experience of it and why are we drawn to it? Why are we going to it? And Donald, I think you kind of spoke into that a little bit as we've seen some shifts within our society and how people interact. And we're more connected now more than ever because of technology and resources that we have. But is it being effective in a way that is drawing us closer together as a society? And so I think we have to ask that question, like why? And I'll throw it back to you guys. Like why do you feel like people are drawn so much into this concept? Is it us trying to escape our reality? Whether that maybe looks like, you know, if I'm in a place where I can't stand my real life, let's just be honest, am I trying to escape to something else? What do you guys think? Like what is the why behind it, you know?
Me, Donald, you got it. I got
Go
this
ahead, dude.
part real quick from my opinion. So I used to do this a lot in high school, right? What did I play in high school? I would play Xbox almost every
Mm-hmm.
night. I created basically a family of people on Xbox, right? They knew everything. We talked about everything. Um, and, you know, it was like an escape from this world, you know? An escape. And, you know, we had clans. We were called clans. So we had um, our clan was brothers from different mothers, BFDM. So we're all don't make fun of it. Come on, guys. So now we're called T-Log, the League of Gentlemen. So um, so
Same
BF
people?
some of them's gone. Some of them like
Okay, okay.
this was older. So I was adopted into like an older clan. I was 16 when I joined it, and most of them were like 25 and up. So um, all of the guys now are like in their 50s and 60s, um,
Crazy.
and 40s. So But no, it's BFDM. So like we built a family, we built a community on there, but it was different. So it was like I've never met any of them. I don't know who they are in person. I don't know who they are in real life. So, I mean, it's an escape, but you build a community in that escape.
Yeah, no, in my opinion, I think for most people, it'll be escapism and fantasy, and people struggle to live in reality and aren't happy with their reality, so they want to live in a fantasy world. And I don't say that in a mocking way, I just say it as in truth. We see it now. We see fantasy sports, we see all the reality shows, we see television and movies that take us away to a different world. And I'm a huge, like, I'm entertainment junkie, right? Like, me and my wife, like, will watch shows or watch movies. Like I said on another episode, like, I had stepped away from video games because I didn't have balance, and I felt like God told me to do that, specifically me. But I think video games are awesome. There's some positives to it. There's also some uh, negatives if there's an imbalance, or right, or if it becomes like a little bit too much, like you being addicted and not balancing. But yeah, I think the truth is that that's one of the dangerous things, is that people will just escape from their reality because the reality isn't great, and justifiably so. Like, they might be poor, they might be going through struggles, like I've been there. Growing up, I had a little bit of a crazy household. Even though my parents were great parents, it wasn't always the most peaceful. And playing video games was an escape, just to hang out and play video games, and it was have fun. So, but yeah, that's a negative. Something I read in that article from the Gospel Coalition. They're kind of given a few different points of things to watch out for. And one of them was the givenness of identity in the customized world. And I thought, ooh, really, really sunk in with me, because if you think, again, this is like a former youth pastor talking to you right now. So being with young people, not too far removed from it too, just a couple of years ago. If you think it's already challenging for adults and for young people with their identity because of social media and who they are in God, and what really matters, it's going to be even more challenging in the metaverse, because they can create all that. They can create their world and who they are. And in some ways, it's a really cool opportunity. And in other ways, like, I'm a huge proponent in that I believe that the devil has lulled Christianity to sleep in a lot of ways. Not everybody, but in a lot of ways, the American church, we've been kind of lulled to sleep by entertainment and by comfort. And this goes right along with it, that we get lulled into a sleep of entertainment and hanging out and doing all these things, that we miss what we're supposed to do on this earth, which is to spend time with Jesus and to spread his word. So that those are kind of, some of my initial thoughts about, the dangers of it, honestly, that we need to really be mindful of.
No, that's
Yeah,
huge.
and I think circling back to a statement you made earlier, Donald, is like when we now circle back to that conversation of the church and how do we interact with this? It's like everything in moderation, like everything in life. It truly is. How are we using it? And I think honestly, I think that when it comes to maybe streaming or social media, and now this whole concept of virtual reality and metaspace, how is the church going to respond to it? The church at large, how are we as believers? Are we going to? Because many times I think that we miss the boat for fear of misuse of the platform, right? And like you said, it's not the message that changed. It's maybe the medium and what we and how we share it does. And so I think there's a greater risk of the church misusing and
Yeah.
misrepresenting
Mm-hmm.
ourselves within maybe this said space, instead of completely just missing it at all and just writing it off, and saying, no, there's no potential for this at all. There's nothing that's good can come out of this. It's completely evil. I think we would be completely misusing this opportunity. Now, am I saying that, any extra cash flow the church has, we should invest heavily into real estate within Meta so we can build church platforms for every single church? No, like Matt said, I don't think there's number one, most churches don't necessarily even have that kind of resource. But I think it's really the mentality that we can look at it and say, okay, how can we most effectively use it as an opportunity and a tool in moderation? Because
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is miss that opportunity to reach somebody. And whether it was through a church live stream or it was through a conversation in the metaverse, maybe that person, we've talked a little bit about this, maybe that person would never, ever think about setting foot in a church. But based on an interaction maybe they have with somebody or walking into a metaverse church, they'd consider actually in real life thinking about actually going and doing it. You never know. And there's stories, even I've heard through some different individuals who are trying this and evangelizing and life church and things they've done where people truly have encountered God, So yeah, I would just say that's something I think that we have as believers have to be careful of is don't miss what the real focus of that opportunity can be. And is it to use it effectively for the spread of the gospel. So
So when it comes back to the whole community side of things, right? A lot of people probably freak out saying, "Oh, they're not in the church. They're not in the church," right? How can we do something to make it to where they are in the church, in the community church? So, like I was saying a little earlier, how I became a clan member by joining this BFDM. They were a family. Like I still talk to a lot of them every day. Not every day, but I talk to them when I play Xbox. I have all their phone numbers. I can reach out to them if I need something. How can we implement that into this, but do it for Jesus? So, having the community, people want people in the church for sure. That's where you're going to really experience God, right? You can experience God at home, but to be in the community with that
Yeah.
is where you can receive a hug,
It's
a
different.
physical hug.
It's different being in person.
Yeah, for sure. So there's going to be a lot of pushback on that, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree. And I think it's maybe so much not do we use it or do we not use it? It's more of like how do we have creative solutions to bridge that gap? You
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And does that look like creating up resources and opportunity that's readily available for people that, hey, wherever you're from, and I've seen some people try and do this is like, cataloging basically resources and churches maybe within their area. And so again, I think going back and Donald was kind of sharing this and reminding me of the story of like Craig Rochelle and Life Church. And not that we're like highlighting them specifically for any reason, but they were the ones that did create they created the Bible app. It was the first Bible app. It was when iPhones first came out. People are like, this is not going to work. This is not going to take off. And they saw great success right away. Why? Because they took a leap of faith and said, let's give it a shot and see what happens with it. And now you can see that, most people are somewhat familiar maybe with what the Bible app is. And so, yeah, I think it's finding creative means to actually approach this and then living in
Yeah.
moderation, I would say are two important things to think about for
100%.
anyone, for anybody
Yeah.
looking at how do we react to what this whole space looks like.
No, I mean, you're spot on. Like the moderation thing, like, okay, we all agree. Like if you use social media, man, like I could go, hey, I'm going to use social media to talk about Jesus. Okay. Now what happened the last 45 minutes? Well, man, I watched one video on TikTok or Instagram and I started scrolling and I kept scrolling and all of a sudden it's been an hour and I didn't do anything, right? Why? Because of lack of discipline, moderation, not having enough self-awareness or having some type of gauge. So 100% this could be that as well. Like, hey, I'm going to go out, you know, to the bars to go evangelize to people, but then I'm gonna go fall into my no. So yeah, you have to be on guard. You have to have wisdom. You know, probably go with other people, right? Like other Christians, just like you would normally with evangelism. But yeah, I think that is for sure. You have to make sure your life isn't so wrapped up in your identity in the metaverse, right? Like all those type of things that we've talked about, you know, in recent years with social media and the internet and how that affects us emotionally, and not having those physical human connections and how that can affect us. You know, all those things are real situations that we need to be mindful of, that we need to be on guard for. But here's what I'll say. And I'm in my 30s now, so I'm eventually, you know, going to be older, if you will. Like eventually, I mean, people probably
You're an old
way
man.
younger than me think I'm an old man now. Um, these guys are younger than me, so that's why they're saying it. But here is my kind of illustration, and this is my, and don't get me wrong, I'm more concerned about how it's going to affect people's mentals, how it's going to affect their identity, how people are going to get lost in this world. I have 3 kids. I think about this. I more think about the negatives than the positives. So hear me. Like, I'm very much aware of the challenges that this is going to cause and the dangers of this. That being said, people are going to go there. People are going to be there regardless, right? So we do need to reach them, because more and more people are going to be home and not going to go out as often. So how are you going to talk to these people? How are you going to reach them, right? And what I would say to you is, if you thought door-to-door evangelism was effective at one point, if you, and this is especially, you know, maybe my parents' generation, if you thought the Bible track was powerful and it worked, well, then this can work too. Like this can work too. Like the Holy Spirit, right? The Spirit of God is within us as Christians, and through our lives, we can be a mouthpiece to point people to Jesus, to give people prophetic words, to pray for them and them to be healed. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know, yes, laying hands is an important thing, but also I believe that there's been plenty of times that I've called somebody on the phone and prayed for them, and the Lord and the Holy Spirit would minister to them in that moment. So it is an opportunity. Don't discount it. And really what you need to do is just pray about, hey, what ways can I get involved? Maybe it is being involved in person. Maybe it isn't in the metaverse, but really start to pray, like, you know, in what ways um, can I be an impact, you know, for people who need Jesus.
For sure. Now, I
So our
think we need
homework
to.
for all of our listeners is to go and buy a VR headset and start your
No,
online
that's not our
ministry.
homework.
I'm just kidding. I'm
No,
just kidding.
I think
The
I
discount code is in the description below.
I
Just
think
kidding.
we
We are
should
not sponsored by any.
I think we should do a topic on this though. How to handle yourself as a Christian in the universe, metaverse.
There you go.
No, that's cool.
I think
Yeah.
that's a topic that we might all have to go buy these VR headsets and then do it in VR.
Well,
Or
and to be honest with you too, Matt. Yeah, do it in VR. We could.
maybe
To be honest with you,
that's what we're doing our podcast from now on, metaverse style.
we'll let you guys know. Well, that's up for discussion. But here's what I'll say too, is that's a great topic that we will address, is how to be Christians in the metaverse. Because guess what? You might go, well, that's not relevant to me. Okay. The same conversation that we're having about how to be Christians in the metaverse is the same conversation of how to be Christians on social media. And hear me, I think one of the loudest denominations in the Christian church on social media is the Republican and Democratic Party. But whoa, we're not going to go there. I'm not going to go there today. But I'm saying that that is definitely something that we need to be mindful of how we should be as Christians and what should be our focuses in as Christians in the church on the metaverse and social media. So, okay. So I won't go too far into that. I'm not a very political person, but I'm a gospel centered person. That's my heart behind all of this. So hear my heart. We will touch on that at some point. Okay. Final thoughts, guys, as we wrap up today on the metaverse. Any last thoughts that you have?
No, because I'm going to go into like 5 other tangents. So you got my mind really working now. So I think we need a couple topics on this in the next couple weeks.
For sure. We got to do more on it.
I
Anything
think
from you, Brennan?
I think yeah, I'll stick with what we said earlier. Is in consideration of this, what are even creative ways that God can use us, and we'll just open that up to use you through social media, use you through personal in-person interactions, use you in this new space. What are ways that God can inspire and bring out new things, and how are we living in every area of our life with this mentality of eternity with moderation? And I think that's a key factor to consider. So that we don't get lost in anything that we're doing. So
that's good. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you guys again for joining us on the Temporal Eternal podcast. Once again, subscribe. Even if you just listen or watch on one platform, we really appreciate it if you subscribe and follow, leave ratings too. It really helps those algorithms and to get in front of other people. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And yes, of course, temporaleternal.com. Cop a t-shirt,
get some
cop
merch.
a hat, get some merch. Some of the proceeds are actually going to be going to some really cool gospel-centered media projects. We're going to be releasing some spoken words and some different things like that, which are going to be, for encouraging and challenging Christians, but also spreading the gospel to non-believers. So some of the proceeds of that store go to kind of creating those things. And there's a few other really big things that we have. I've kind of mentioned on some other episodes. But we really honestly don't have a ton of funds to put them all together yet. So that's why we have the little apparel store shop to, put some funds towards it. So thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate your support. Again, if you guys have any prayer requests or anything like that, feel free to DM us, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And then, of course, if you ever have suggestions for topics, passages of scripture, whatever, send us a message or even comment on the video on YouTube, or feel free to just comment on any of our social media posts. But thank y'all and hope you have an awesome week.
Hoo day.